the connection between enterprise architecture and governance is a symbiotic relationship. Really, one can't exist without the other. If you're putting an enterprise architecture together, you want to implement it, and you want to make sure that it's being implemented correctly and it's being used on an ongoing basis. The way you make sure that it's being done correctly and it's being used throughout the organization is with a robust governance model. One that's transparent, that's repeatable, that everyone knows about, that knows what step A is and then what step B is and the next step after that, so that they can follow it as the standard for the organization. So my opinion is it is absolutely a necessary part of putting any enterprise architecture or any architecture together. I know a lot of the times when we have discussions about enterprise architecture, governance is put on the back burner. It's mentioned, but what's not mentioned is how do you do proper governance? And I think that needs to be addressed because of its importance in making sure enterprise architecture happens correctly.
One of the main drivers, both for all the technology, is change.
Yes.
But sometimes I ask if is necessary this change. It's something like the technology is pushing the change just for commercial purpose, or because the dynamic of the life is so accelerated that conduce to the change.
Yeah. So the rate of change in the IT industry is phenomenal. Just the progression of technology, that rate of change is also astronomical, and it dictates that an organization changes to utilize new technology when it's appropriate and to make sure that they utilize it correctly. With the growth of the IT industry and the amount of advancements that it will continue to make, and by the way, in my opinion, I think the IT industry and the IT environment is in its infancy today. And with its rapid growth, it will continue to grow to places we can't imagine right now. Can't imagine today, and we'll do that in a short period of time. So I think in the next 5 years, we'll see things that are commonplace that we haven't thought of, that we didn't fathom today. And so managing that change, making sure that change is done effectively, and that change, whatever the changes that you implement, making sure that it maps to business goals and environment, it is absolutely the responsibility of a robust governance model and, of course, the responsibility of enterprise architecture.
Human beings are an obstacle for this change?
No. Well, yes and no. So most humans don't handle change well. My opinion is that's because change is presented incorrectly. So and again, a responsibility of a good governance model and good enterprise architects is to make sure that change is presented to the implementers of the change or the implementers of that system in a fashion or in a way that they see the benefits in it for them. So again, humans don't handle change well, but if we present it correctly and if we explain why the change adds value, both to an organization and to a person individually, then I think that change happens a lot more quickly.
Do we here talk about the different generation, the boom generation, the X, the G, Zeta, or we must wait until young people take the control of the work of the organization to improve all that the technology could offer today?
This is a My answer is going to be a bit self-serving since I'm not a young person. I don't think that change is contingent upon having young people take over the organization. I think change and implementation of new technology is a collaborative effort, and it should be a collaborative effort based on value. Whether that collaborative effort is implemented or thought of by someone that is older or younger shouldn't manage, or I'm sorry, it shouldn't matter. What should matter is that it's presented correctly, that it's implemented correctly, and that the change is an effective change for the organization. If we wait for a complete change of resources to younger people in an organization, we will never implement change, because by the time those young people get old enough to understand how to implement change, there will be new things to implement.
Big organizations are more or less conscious of the necessity of governance, but what happened with the small and medium companies?
Yep. So in the example that I used in the presentation that I just gave, I talked about cloud environments and cloud-based businesses, which in my opinion is the trend and will be the norm of most businesses going forward. Most startups today don't have the money or the will to invest large amounts of capital to get in a position to implement their business. And they don't have to. They can buy what they need or pay for what they need on an as-used basis. So cloud is a major game changer, major disruptor in ways new businesses start. And certainly, so these new businesses tend to be small, small in staff, and small in the number of people and procedures, but they also tend to be potentially large in their impact and what they reach. And so, in my opinion, that makes thinking through and implementing a well-planned governance model to augment a architecture or to augment a technology plan, in my opinion, having that governance model in place is even more important than it was in the past when we had large monolithic environments.
How'd you talk, Phil?
Pretty good. We're in the middle of an interview, but it went well.
All right, great.
20 years ago, the biggest enemy of technology was price, cost.
Yep.
Now I think it's security. What's your opinion about this problem, and what will be the future? Because it doesn't look that we can bait the security attacks.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. Security is of the utmost importance, especially because we've used technology like cloud computing to reduce the cost of running businesses and to reduce the cost of starting businesses. But in a cloud environment, which is typically multi-tenant, is shared, is physically dispersed, having both physical security and digital security is extremely important. Making sure that the right people have the appropriate access to digital assets and to physical assets is paramount in any environment. So constructing a well thought out security plan and security architecture and then governing and managing that architecture is again key to a business's success. And I think as we move forward, it will be more so. So if we're in a large distributed environment, a cloud environment, where the common connection points are over a public network, like the internet, then we absolutely have to make sure that we control access to to our digital assets, and we need to control them at a individual perspective. So that should be done through policies that direct, that do a number of things. That make sure to authenticate somebody, meaning make sure that they identify that the person is who they say they are, and then we should authorize that person, making sure that that person has the authority to look at or to use what they want to use. Governing in a security environment, especially of course in a cloud environment, again is very important because of the different regulations that come into play with a vastly dispersed computing model.
There is another issue that attempts against technology is obsolescence. You cannot make, for example, a master 2 years studying something that in 1 year is obsolete.
Yeah. So that's a very good point. I have, in my own education, I've taken a non-traditional approach, meaning, of course, I went through primary school and then through secondary school, but I took a break before I went to university, and I got real life experience, and then went back to university and continued to be a lifelong learner. And for me, and maybe this is just for me, what I found is the best way for me to learn, and I think for others to learn, especially in IT, is to learn about the enduring concepts. Things that don't change with technology. Architecture doesn't, the concept of architecture and the way you do architecture doesn't change with technology. You do it the same way. The technology might change, but those are the tools that you use to implement technology. But the way you think through and design things really don't change that much. We might take different approaches, but still we use a scientific method. So I think if we teach new IT resources, the basics or the foundational components about IT, and then more importantly, teach them how to think from a systems perspective, then I think they can use, digest, and implement any technology. It certainly has been true in my career. When I started a long time ago, everything was green screen. And then as I progressed into client server, I did that because I knew the basics and I knew the foundational approaches to computing. And those concepts don't change. Also the concepts of being responsible for doing my own research and continually to learn helps me to implement, to digest, and to use new technologies. I think we can do the same with new and emerging IT students as they go through school.